In this episode, we are going to explore what really happens when you let someone from outside your organization connect to your cloud environment, and why that decision must be handled with more care than many beginners expect. Third-party access is common in modern cloud environments because vendors, contractors, support teams, and integration partners often need some level of connectivity to do their jobs. The risk is not that third parties are automatically malicious, but that their access expands your trust boundary beyond your own employees and devices. When you allow an external identity into your environment, you are extending your security posture into another organization's operational reality. Securing third-party access, therefore, means reducing that extended risk to something controlled, intentional, and measurable. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. The first concept to understand is that third-party identities should never be treated like internal staff identities with the same broad privileges. A vendor helping with a specific application does not need broad administrative access across the entire cloud account. This is where strict scoping becomes critical, because permissions must match the exact business purpose of the engagement. When you hear the term least privilege, think of it as granting only the minimum access required to perform a defined task and nothing more. For third parties, least privilege is not optional. It is the foundation of safe collaboration. Broad access given for convenience often becomes the entry point for compromise, especially when external identities are not monitored as closely as internal ones. Scoping permissions properly starts with clearly defining the work that the third party is expected to perform. If the vendor only needs to troubleshoot a specific application, then access should be limited to that application's resources and environments. If the work is read-only analysis, then write or delete permissions should not be included. It is tempting to grant broad access to avoid back-and-forth requests, but that shortcut trades short-term convenience for long-term exposure. Every additional permission increases blast radius if the third-party account is misused or compromised. Precise scoping turns the external identity into a narrowly defined tool rather than a skeleton key. Another critical element is avoiding shared credentials for third-party access. Sometimes organizations create a generic vendor account that multiple external users share, believing this simplifies management. In reality, shared accounts destroy accountability because actions cannot be tied to a specific individual. If something goes wrong, there is no clear audit trail linking activity to a person. Each third-party user should have a unique identity, even if they work for the same vendor organization. Unique identities enable logging, behavioral analysis, and fast revocation without affecting unrelated users. Monitoring behavior is the second major pillar of securing third-party access. External users often have different patterns of activity compared to internal staff, and that difference can be useful for detection. For example, a support engineer may normally access the environment during business hours and only interact with a specific set of resources. If that identity suddenly begins scanning unrelated services or making configuration changes outside its scope, that deviation should stand out. Monitoring is not about distrust. It is about validating that activity aligns with the defined purpose of access. When behavior deviates from the expected pattern, it becomes an early warning signal. Behavioral monitoring becomes even more important because third-party accounts can be attractive targets for attackers. Vendors may operate in multiple client environments, making their credentials valuable stepping stones. If a vendor's internal systems are compromised, attacker activity might propagate into your environment through legitimate access channels. This is not theoretical. Supply chain attacks have demonstrated how trust relationships can be exploited at scale. Monitoring allows you to detect misuse even if the compromise originated outside your own network. It acts as a safety net when upstream defenses fail. Time-bound access is another powerful control for third-party risk. Instead of granting indefinite access, permissions should have an expiration aligned with the engagement timeline. When the contract or project ends, access should end automatically rather than relying on someone to remember to disable it. Long-lived third-party accounts often remain active long after the original business need has disappeared. Expiration policies reduce the chance that forgotten access becomes a dormant vulnerability. Temporary access enforces the principle that trust is conditional, not permanent. Revocation speed is just as important as initial scoping. If suspicious behavior is detected, or if the business relationship changes, you need the ability to disable access immediately. Delays in revocation can turn a manageable incident into a widespread breach. This requires clear ownership of third-party identities and a defined process for disabling them. Revocation should not require multiple approvals or extended coordination during a crisis. The design should assume that one day you may need to shut access off quickly and cleanly. Another design consideration is how third-party identities authenticate. Strong authentication, including multi-factor authentication, MFA, should be mandatory for external access, especially when privileges are significant. If federation is used to allow vendor users to authenticate through their own identity provider, IDP, then the strength of that IDP's controls matters to your environment. In some cases, organizations require external users to authenticate directly against their own managed identity system to ensure consistent enforcement. The key point is that third-party authentication must meet your security standards, not just theirs. Trust must be earned and verified, not assumed. Network-level controls can also reduce third-party risk by limiting where access can originate. If a vendor typically connects from specific corporate networks, access can be restricted to those known ranges. This does not eliminate all risk, but it narrows the window of exposure. Combining network restrictions with identity-based controls creates layered defense. Even if credentials are stolen, they may not function outside the expected context. Limiting origin points makes credential theft less portable and less valuable. It is equally important to separate production access from development or testing access when working with third parties. Vendors often assist in non-production environments, and granting production privileges unnecessarily increases impact if something goes wrong. If production access is required, it should be more tightly controlled and more heavily monitored. Segmentation reduces the chance that experimentation or misconfiguration in one area affects critical systems. Clear environment boundaries make scoping more meaningful. Documentation and review processes are another often overlooked part of third-party security. Each external identity should have a recorded business justification, defined scope, and review schedule. Periodic access reviews ensure that permissions still match the engagement's current needs. Over time, projects evolve, and original permissions may become outdated or excessive. Regular review catches this drift before it becomes dangerous. Governance turns one-time decisions into ongoing oversight. Incident response planning should explicitly include third-party scenarios. If a vendor notifies you of a breach in their environment, you need predefined steps to assess impact and adjust access. This may include forced credential rotation, temporary suspension of access, or additional monitoring. Planning these steps in advance reduces hesitation during real events. The more quickly you respond, the smaller the potential impact. Third-party risk is manageable when response pathways are clear. Ultimately, securing third-party access is about aligning trust with necessity and maintaining visibility into how that trust is used. Strict scoping ensures that external identities can only perform defined tasks. Monitoring behavior confirms that activity matches expectations and reveals deviations early. Fast revocation allows you to cut off access immediately when circumstances change or risk increases. Time limits, strong authentication, network restrictions, and regular reviews reinforce these principles. When these controls are combined, third-party access becomes a controlled extension of your environment rather than an uncontrolled exposure. By understanding that every external connection represents a deliberate expansion of your trust boundary, you begin to treat third-party access as a design decision rather than an afterthought. Convenience alone should never dictate permission levels or account duration. Instead, access should be intentional, temporary when possible, and continuously observed. With disciplined scoping, vigilant monitoring, and rapid revocation capability, you reduce the chance that a vendor relationship becomes a security incident. That mindset keeps collaboration productive while keeping your cloud environment resilient.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.